It looks like we're live, mostly. Have to do the usual find out if it's working thing. Yeah, eh, whatever. Take a second. Load the video. Find out if it's working thing. Okay, it's working. All right. So we got to pop the chat out, and then we'll be ready to go. Probably, mostly. All right, and I'll read some comments, I guess, and such. So that should work. Yeah, yeah, I think something doesn't break into my house. What the hell was that? Anyway, okay, comments. What the fuck is this bookmark thing? I don't like that. All right. So, universal expanse. The idea of redshift is getting to me. My understanding is it represents a drop of light frequency due to light traveling away from the observer. Well, it's really not traveling away. It's the fact that the observer is moving away, therefore expanding the amount of space between you and the observer and the target, therefore stretching the light. But I would argue that it's actually how the light is being thrown. So it's much like throwing a baseball off a moving train. All right, even though technically and mathematically sounds correct, I don't see how redshift could be seen by the observer since light would have to be traveling toward the observer to be visible. Yes, it still is. And even though it is moving away from the observer, well, like I said, it's not moving away. The target, the thing emitting the light is moving away, but it's moving away at a much slower speed than the speed of light. So basically, it would appear to be the same unchanged color and not red at all. Well, whatever, not quite right. All right. So then some excessive peril, whatever. Look, I'm a retard, but my question to you would be just like you mentioned regarding their theory, they make up the mechanism, and that mechanism aren't you doing the same by saying the force is everywhere? Well, how is it the same? We all know there's force. We know the electromagnetic spectrum. We know there's a ton of radio waves flying through me now, all kinds of stuff, microwaves. We know all these invisible forms of radiation exist, and that all I'm asking you to understand is there's some we can't measure except like this. That's how we measure their existence. We can't see them because they don't have a frequency. That's a lot different than a mechanism for which that bends space or that eats space or that whatever it does to space. And it's certainly a lot different than a mechanism that says something is a virtual thing and it just creates virtual energy. So I don't know how you can't understand how I'm not suggesting a mechanism any different than a lot more light. That's all I'm suggesting. An already existing mechanism. I think somewhere your theory breaks down here. Well, I think you're an asshole. So, fuck you. You know, if the force bits can only move in straight lines, yeah, like light, asshole. Just like fucking photons, retard. Shit. But it's coming from all directions. Wouldn't that? Oh, see, I mean, shit. I tell you the word Mach gravity. You go look it up. It's basically Lesage gravity. It's a straight line force, idiot. And it works. It's a fact. You don't need to trust me. Okay? Go look it the fuck up. Damn, stupid cunts. All right. But it's coming from all directions. Wouldn't that imply a universe is trapped in some bubble pushing on itself or something? Well, again, why don't you? The conventional physics says there's cosmic background radiation. Go look that up. All right. And then I'll just argue that, yes, the same source. So they already accept the existence of this energy, shithead. I'm just suggesting that there's a little bit more of it than we've measured. That's it, fuckhead. You rude little fuck. Okay. How would the force come from all directions? Why don't you ask them how cosmic background radiation comes from all directions? Because that's what they think it does. So I'm not disagreeing with them on that subject, shithead. Can you elaborate? Fuck you. Thinking of a possible Big Bang. Well, I don't give a fuck about bangs. How would pressure be applied? Well, again, they already accept the cosmic background and radiation. So why don't you ask them this question? Oh, that's right. It doesn't occur to you to ask any questions when they say something's reality. When they say it, you don't bother asking them any questions. You don't harass them. Why don't you go harass Professor Lewin and ask for these answers, fuckhead? I mean, your duplicity is so fucking obvious. Thinking of a possible Big Bang, how would pressure be applied from all directions? And also, if it were to be plausible, why would the force be the same pressure in 3D space? Well, if you ever saw a smoke ring from a cannon, for example, you might understand that that's possible, that you can have energy that's trapped, okay, in a plane of an area of space. They do it with waves in swimming pools. They create whatever they're called, the tornado-y things, and they just go right down the pool. A little bit of trapped force. Also, I assume your theory implies that the force bits do not affect other force bits. Well, I've already explained that 7,000 times. But yeah, the black ones might affect the black ones, and the red ones might affect the red ones. But if they do, you'll never know it because hitting each other and missing in a pure kinetic interaction is impossible to tell the difference. In pure kinetics, you can't tell the difference between bouncing off and going right past. Looks identical. If so, why not? Cheers. Yeah, well, fuck you and your cheers shit, you rude shit. All right, Homo sapien. Honestly, your theory makes much more sense than relativity. I'm convinced. Well, there's one. Okay, yay from my side. Finally. Very good. I hope you can maintain your intelligence without backsliding or something. Let's see. Miles used to be pretty reasonable on an intelligent individual. Well, he's always written raggy, stupid, truther, loopy crap. And he's got some kind of bizarre Jew obsession. He's going on at the Electric Universe as some sort of Jewish conspiracy or something. He is just so fucking crazy. I used to read his art critique, but now he has turned into some sort of cartoon of his former self. Yeah, I think he was always a bit of a nutter. He rambles so much that it is difficult to follow him. Yeah, he just keeps going. I mean, really, he spends two whole articles on the Electro Universe guys, and he spends no time on the actual theory and just wastes all this time talking about who's a Jew. I mean, it's just so fucking stupid. At this stage, he still defends universal gravity in spite of having debunked Newton's formulation. Well, he's got some weird ass spin theories too. He thinks photons are spinning, and that's how the polarization filters work, and it's all wrong. Yeah, his stupid pi equals 4 thing. I wish he would just admit, yes, that was bullshit. He is a shill and I don't think he's a shill, and uncoordinated false prophet to boot. I think he's just a nut. What he is doing in the world other than creating enemies by confronting them head first. Yeah, well, he makes all truthers look bad because he's just a perfect example of tinfoil hat kook. I'm going to write wacky articles about how, a guy with ALS was replaced by another guy with ALS. I mean, it's just so fucking loop-de-doo insane. I mean, it's just too stupid. All right, so enough of that. All right, so I think that's all the relevant comments. Let's see. Blood in humans is not magnetic. Well, it has iron in it. That would interfere with circulation. No, it really wouldn't. We're talking about little tiny bits of what do they call it? Magnetite. Little tiny things. Insects have a copper-based blood. So what? I'm not talking about the base of their blood. I'm talking about the magnetite. You can't magnetize copper permanently. Obviously, these bugs were permanently magnetized. Okay, so they must have had magnetite in them or something that could be, or iron that could be magnetized. So I don't think it's the blood doing uh, anything magnetic. Well, again, I think it's the circulation of the blood, the little bits of magnetite that might be in some of the blood cells. And as they move through the body, they start moving all the other pieces of magnetism. And that's why it loses its magnetism. I'm just saying we have a difference. 5 days for a dead bug, you know, and we have uh, 50 minutes for the live bug. I'm just saying it seems kind of obvious the difference between the two bugs is the circulation of the blood. All right. All right, about the double slit. Yeah, I already did that. If you send the photons one by one, yeah, I already did that at the other comment. All right. Let's see if we have anything, nothing in the chat yet. Good. Oh, Danish physicist, yes. Gary, do the force bits in your model have mass? Well, they obviously have momentum in the sense they impart their function. So let's see if that counts as mass. If they move an electron, right? As let's say they're bouncing between two electrons, and the electrons and they're reflecting. You could argue they got to have something called mass if they can reflect, right? So that's, I guess, what I would argue is they must have something called mass. But I don't know if it's necessary to give them any. I just don't know. Mass is such a tricky number now that if you think about the fact that electrons can't maintain velocity, that is, they can only be accelerated. So as long as you have a voltage behind them, they have mass. But if there's no voltage potential, that is, there's absolutely nothing pushing on an electron, there's no proton around, there's no other electron around. If you could create a completely neutral environment for an electron, not a pressurized environment, but neutral to the universe, in a sense, the electron has no mass. So, I mean, the idea of mass just really means trapping force. Mass is pressure. So, mass is a collection of pressure. And you can sort of see that with like the Earth. As I pointed out, the center of the Earth may have zero gravity, but it has intense pressure. So, in a sense, the pressure, the collection of pressure, is mass. Yeah, good answer. All right. Yeah, I thought there'd be a little more comment action. Come on, people. I have to go find some more jerky comments, I guess. I guess I could read these weird, whatever this chick thing is, fake chick, Holly Alexander. Um, you are like Jesus. I'm afraid not. You speak in parables, but not to compromise himself. Well, again, what parables do I speak in? I mean, I explicitly say things. An electron and proton are monopoles of magnetism. I mean, I say overtly things. No parable, no analogy, no, I certainly use metaphors merely to point out that I don't know exactly the nature of polarization, in the sense I don't know the exact nature of the difference between an electron and proton. One might just be going this way and one's going this way, but I don't know exactly. I haven't felt any need to be explicit about that, so I metaphor it to just a difference. Girl, boy. Which one has a penis? It doesn't really matter. All right. If you say that gravity is a force and the medium of that force is carried by photons, there's no carried by. That is the photon. Okay. The photon isn't carrying the force, it is the force. Okay. The graviton. While in the same breath you demolish ether, well, I don't demolish it. I just say there's no need for it. We have the electromagnetic spectrum. You can imagine a spectrum that doesn't have frequency. What do I need ether for? It doesn't serve a purpose. We already can identify these little bits in the radio waves and light and all this stuff and cosmic rays and gamma radiation. We already can identify it as little discrete bits of stuff. What do I need the ether for? With a catch up of your own, whatever that means. You happen to preach on the mountain to fulfill the prophecy that indeed there is a force which makes the objects fall to earth. Regardless, I've explained why it's a really good explanation because it unifies physics. That's a really good reason to accept it. And second, it's perfectly reasonable compared to the wacky crap you're saying is the true fable, which is space. There's a bendifier, a space bendifier, the magical invisible space bendifier, and the magical virtual photoner. You need Blackboard on screen to make the listener, viewer follow you. Well, I don't really think so. If you can't follow the simple drawings, then you're too stupid for the conversation. Oral communication is not the best medium, says you. I guess if there were oral communications by Einstein on the subject of physics, you don't think those would have value? They'd be incredibly useful. Feynman is known for his lectures, more so than his books. His books are actually just copies of his lectures, for fuck's sake. I mean, you're just such a fucking cunt for explaining abstract things. Well, it's not that abstract, actually. It's pretty bowling ball hitting bowling pins. I think a video of that is the best way to illustrate it. You are in front of thousands of people lately. I don't know about that. Interested in physics and need to be grasped visually, not with gestures. Again, this is just such bullshit. Nuances, drawls, stress, rhythm, all this bullshit. Clearly, lectures are very useful, and Professor Lewin's lectures are very useful because he does demonstrations, draws a picture on the fucking board. I mean, what are you talking about? The people, especially women, see you're not a woman, see these things easier to concentrate more on your hair, to be steering wheel eyed, blinking world, whatever your message. So whatever. Sorry, I'm just going to delete your messages because they're stupid. Addendum, please know that salt speak of flat earth. Don't be shill your honest opinion. Why would I speak on a retarded, a fundamentally and insanely retarded? Why don't you just say, why don't I talk on the theory that the Washington Monument's made out of human feces? I mean, it's just stupid. It's a waste of people's time. Margaret Annensel. Let's see. My point is, okay, and I'm a student of medicine, not of physics. Why bother to get entangled in that spider net of convoluted explanations produced by those false prophets of LIGO? I don't know exactly how I did any of that. I'm pointing out how their underlying premises for their machine, their interferometer, are bogus and that they need to account for some of that. Since from the beginning, that is another piece of the game of sophistries created by established physics professors, question mark. Well, clearly, if you're going to make bold claims about listening to binary black holes crash into each other, you should have really good evidence, not really, really weak evidence. Gravity does not exist, period. Well, that's just insane. Mathis, who the hell is he? I mean, you people still can't get it. It's just so bad. I mean, Miles Mathis posts a thing saying, Gary's not me. I say, I'm not Miles Mathis, over and over. And these idiots still pay no attention. Like the rest of the bunch of fake butterfly collectors salviate to catch the sapo whatever that proves gravity is not a wave, whatever all that mush is. What a waste of time trying to find errors in the mathematical explanations of a fantasy nebula that has been created on the university blackboard solely. I don't know how it's a waste of time to argue that something may not be sufficiently evidenced as a conclusion. I think that's exactly what somebody who's responsible should be doing, is pointing out how they've done something wrong or they've made a mistake. What are you ragging about? Do you also have a Jew problem, Margaret? In the real world of nose hair trimmers, neither, I mean, you're not really saying anything here. I mean, why don't you just use Ken Wheeler knuckle dragging kind of bullshit rhetoric? Neither black holes, big bangs, nor wormholes exist. Well, I don't know if you have enough evidence to say they don't exist, especially the Big Bang. I mean, black holes, yeah, who knows? Neither Einstein nor Isaac Newton, even less than sobering sci fi writer Stephen Hawking, were right. Neither. Well, I think Newton was always right because Newton never jumped past his evidence. Everything, the whole circus is smoky math fencing to disprove a fallacy is nothing, is the most incredible waste of time. So again, you're just, I don't know what you're wasting time. Your comment is a waste of fucking goddamn. It was a waste of my time to read it. So it doesn't say anything. Clearly, there's theories beyond just math. Einstein isn't just giving you math. His field equations don't even have bent space time in them, really. They have velocity and they have a coefficient of effect from velocity. So, really, the only connection is between velocity and clocks breaking by a certain amount based on velocity. And that math hasn't been tested at any real speed, so we don't even know if it means anything anyway. But frankly, um, the theory is underlying the mathematics, and that needs to be argued. All right, that's another jerky comment, but let's see if there's the real people to argue with. These stupid commenters. Good explanation. How does the LIBO work, in your opinion? There is no LIBO. It's LIGO. Uh, Look, Tyler, I mean, I don't, you're somewhat stepping beyond your knowledge base. I can't explain all of interferometry to you. Okay, now, and especially the LIGO one's a really big one. Okay, so, but as I've pointed out, there's clearly a problem with the beam splitter. That's the source of the the game being played. So now I don't even know what kind LIGO actually uses. I don't know whether they're using a half silver beam splitter or whether they're using a cube, which is two prisms glued together. But what I've pointed out is that clearly the two paths are not equal when you use such a splitter, because one is diverging and one isn't. One is spreading and one beam isn't for most of the journey. So the two beams are distinctly different. And as I pointed out on my porch, all I can say for sure is I can create the pattern without intersecting two beams. I can create it with just one beam once I diverge it and reflect it off a mirror. All right, do you agree with the second law of thermodynamics? I agree with them as principles or tendencies, let's call them. But they're not, what do you mean by law? Do I know the law of the universe? Like I said, I mean, the whole thermodynamic argument is over as soon as I turn the universe into a bubble, let's say, where the energy reflects off the interior of the bubble, right? Then all of a sudden, thermodynamics doesn't mean anything because all the energy is coming back. So even if you irradiate it all, it's all coming back again. So, you know, but whatever. Yes, generally speaking, I believe in those principles. Things will tend to do things, but it isn't an explicit rule and clearly enclosed systems like the Earth's atmosphere, you can have you can break lots of laws. Uh, you can have different um, properties that are against the general tendency. I see. So would it be fair to say that these force bits are a form of particle? Well, I don't know. I think I've been pretty clear, and I'm arguing a kind of a particle theory. Now, I don't care one way or the other whether you call them a particle. I'm saying they're a discrete corpuscle, to use Feynman's language. It's a corpuscle, to use Newton's language. It's a little thing. It's a bit. So I called it a bit. It's a bit. I don't care what it's made out of. It only has two properties. It moves the speed of light in a straight line until it hits an electron. And that's it. There's no other story. And do these bits act in accordance to Newton's mechanics? I've already pointed out that they move the speed of light, which isn't Newton mechanics, but clearly they move in a straight line, which is Newton. As you implied with the ping pong ball analogy, yes, it's kinetic. Yes, they all are the same size, they all move the same speed, and you can change the frequency, the distance between them. So you can fire them like machine gun bullets, or you can fire them like whatever, relaxed bullets. And if you do that, you can affect things differently based on how fast you fire the bullets. High frequency can do more damage. It can tip things over. Low frequency, not so much. Hey, from Kabul. Well, that's not a nice place to be. I'm sorry. Such. Regarding bending starlight, in the experiment supposedly confirming bending of light during a solar eclipse. Yeah, I've already been over it and over it. I've got so many videos on the subject. You got to watch those. The sun would bend light outward. It wouldn't bend it outwards. Dense mediums like the corona would bend light inward. I'm sorry, they won't. Dense mediums, okay? To call the corona a medium in the sense of an organized lattice would be kind of cheating. Clearly, the corona might be charged and it could have some orientation, but it seems more likely it's just going to scatter light. It's not going to bend it in a particular direction. And that's not gravity, that's particulate bending. Those are electrons causing the bending. That's different than gravity. I've pointed out in the question videos, I think it's in there. I could always do it again. I've already pointed out two huge flaws in lensing arguments. But I mean, clearly the math is just so corrupt. This idea that we don't apply the inverse square law to photons. Why not? Earth's atmosphere is not a closed system, though. I'm sorry, it is. It gets energy from the sun. It doesn't matter. I wasn't saying it was I'm saying it's closed in the sense that it's a trap. Stuff can go in, but it can't get out. It's a roach motel. All right, so it's not obeying the same rules in that it's a system that takes in stuff, holds on to it for a very, 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 very long time. Now, clearly, the laws of entropy will win in the end, but clearly, for millions of years, the laws can be broken because the sunlight goes in, gets turned into plant life, the plant life gets buried in the earth, and you have a zillion, 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 zillion hours worth of solar energy trapped as coal and oil. So, I mean, come on, quit being an asshole. Jeez. The point is, it's not, the word closed system doesn't mean closed like a freaking vial of glass where you put everything inside and then put a cork in it. It just means the system is not free to interact. It's interacting in a confined way or a specifically closed way. Certain doors aren't open. Okay, got it. Good. Sorry, I didn't mean to be short with you, but it is just kind of, it's something you got to be careful about. I didn't realize it until I started doing this, that the idea of when they say something's a law or even a principle, they're really, you can only talk about these things in terms of being tendencies, because even the inverse square law, when you really think about it, when you bring the scale smaller and smaller, it breaks down because it's no longer, force at all angles. Because once you're interacting with one electron, that electron isn't spreading force in all directions. It's basically interacting directly. And charge is now what we call gravity, is what to it is called charge. Water is not a lattice, but bends light. Well, how do you say water is not a lattice? Of course it is. The water molecules are so adhesive that they form water droplets. The water molecules stick to each other, and you put them in space and they, you have to force them apart. So they're clearly a lattice in the sense that the particles have a huge connection to each other. They're bound by tension. So too would the plasma be a medium? No, no. I would argue that there's no evidence that, say, infrared radiation um, and electrons, and let's see what other, you'd have some nuclei, some ions, um, that any of that stuff connects like water molecules connect to water molecules, water atoms connect to water atoms. The connections aren't going to, there's not too many whole atoms. I mean, by percentage, how much of the corona is made of whole atoms? It's mostly made out of nuclear bits, not atomic bit, not atomic wholes. So obviously the bonding would be very different than atomic bonding. But yes, there could be some polarization. There could be some stridation. So I'm not saying it's not possible for the corona to bend light in a orchestrated, if you want to call it that way, or consistent manner. I'm just saying I think it's very unlikely because the corona is hot as fuck and there's way too much movement going on for there to be structure. It's like magnetism breaks down with temperature, you know, and then you can reinstate it if you get to a high enough temperature. You go to mega temperatures, then maybe magnetism comes back because then you have to have order at very high temperatures. You're separating all the electrons from the protons, and so you can have order again. But I think the corona is in that middle phase of temperature where it's too hot to be, that it's not hot enough and it's too hot. So it's too hot for regular magnetism and it's not hot enough for, plasma formations. Uh, let's see. Plasma be a medium? No. I do not. I do doubt my understanding of how light scatters bends. Well, it scatters based on the fact that if electrons aren't bound strongly to some structure, then the electrons are moving a lot. You know, as the charge changes, everything's flowing and moving, so the charges are all moving, and that means the electrons are constantly not in a static position because there's so much heat. And so when something hits them, a photon, it won't cause a regular movement in the electron. It won't cause the electron to move and then move back again, that kind of stuff. Where colder electrons on the surfaces of metal and stuff, those electrons want to stay where they are. So when something hits them, they want to go back to where they were. So they release photons, new photons at standard directions where field electrons even in a plasma will still scatter the light in all directions. Yeah, well, the light doesn't really bend. The point is the electron absorbs a photon in the sense that the photon gets collected into a relationship between two electrons, or an electron and a proton and an electron. So the energy is moving between the electrons and the protons and between the electrons and the electrons. And the point is that the energy goes in, it moves the electron. And when the electron repositions is when it releases another photon, but it releases at an angle that is consistent with the electron's position, not what direction the photon hit it. It's, you know, I would argue it's probably pretty complex geometry, but it's just geometry. And if there isn't any standard geometry to where the electrons aren't standardly lined up, then you won't get a standard deviation when a photon hits them. That's my point. Not related. Can we see your painting somewhere? So you don't think I'm Miles Mathis, do you? I mean, I do have paintings. I am a painter, but I'm not Miles Mathis. You can see his paintings on his website, Miles Mathis. I think it's milesmmathis.com. I think his middle initials M. I'm not sure. The one with his middle initial in it is his painting site. The one without his initial is the physics site. But regardless. Yeah, I don't. I have some stuff on the Do Not God website. So if you go to donotgod.com and hit the art link, there might be some of my drawings. There might be some paintings. It's not very much, but there's something there. I mean, there's some videos on the in Mendham channel, but I don't know. I don't have links to them. So anyway, the corona orients itself to follow the magnetic field lines of the sun. Yeah, well, that's speculation about how strong that magnetic field is. So, but yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't, but I'm saying it's so full of energy. I'm still saying that you're still not going to have the kind of rigid alignment that you need to have consistent bending. I mean, if I gave you a glass lens even and I made it really hot so the stuff was moving a lot, you know that it wouldn't make a very good lens. It would blur everything to pieces. So I'm just arguing that I don't think the corona could consistently bend light because it's too hot. So there must be some general orientation to material suspended. Well, again, I'm just going to argue they're atomic bits. So they're just free electrons and helium nuclei and that kind of stuff. And so I don't think there's a great deal of order. Let's see. I know that, but you said you like to paint. Well, okay, okay, good. Thanks. It's really it's not a related subject. I don't even know if I like to paint. I just rather paint than do this. Yeah. I'd rather do my stuff than to have to do this stuff. I guess I could do another poly comment. I have read a bunch of your stuff. I don't have all that bunch of stuff written, so I don't know. I found your writing definitely more inspiring than your YouTube babbling, so this poly must think I'm also Miles Mathis. What I enjoyed enormously was your version of that smoke vendor, John Jake Reed. Eh. Me and my little sister, she was also a physics student of sorts, probably will end up reading your article about John Lennon. Okay, so this is another nut. I don't know how clear can you make it. I titled videos, I'm not Miles Mathis, and you people still can't get it. And we enjoy Ken Wheeler. Well, Ken Wheeler's a religious kook. We find him very coherent. Well, this demonstrates how much I'm wasting my time by reading your comment. And way more than you. for you ramble a lot. Oh, right. And Ken Willard doesn't spend videos just repeating the same shit over and over and over. In the same video, he'll say the same line 6, 7, 12 times. The same line over, the same joke with the same punchline over and over and over again. Oh. Or you ramble a lot and lose us at times, right? But it's too complicated. Two kinds of force bits and two kinds of matter bits. Oh, I can't follow along. But those are tiny gnats on the swill, whatever. Well, what we would like to hear, who cares, for we guess you are a oh yeah, I'm a chicken at heart when I'm the one asking for any comer to show the fuck up and I'll take them on. Anyone. Have the balls to get in the room. I'm not going to kick them out. So go ahead. If they can talk actual physics, I dare them uh, to stand up against me and invade to touch the subject openly out of fear of ramble. Physicists should keep on barking on your ear. Will you just get to a fucking point somewhere here? Gravity or relativity you touch with tweezers. Well, I don't know how it's tweezers. I've overtly said it's bullshit. And with excess foliage of math mumbo jumbo, which is okay, don't get me wrong, for those who like math, but almost as what you did with black holes, your wishy-washiness, I personally find infuriating. So at least all these insults are going to Miles Mathis. I forgot. Did they exist or don't? Why halfway justify the Jew? Okay, now we're done. All right, let's just block this. I'm just so sick of these people with their fucking Jewophobia. Oh, fuck. It's just fucking crazy. Yeah, just, yeah. Yeah, I don't know what even to make analogies to, you know. I mean, I guess if all Jews look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something, there might be something to be afraid of. But I just don't get it. I mean, yes, the whole Israel thing is kind of bogus and bullshit. But I mean, this whole, like I said, all Jews or whatever bullshit is just so fucking ignorant. Stupid fucking people. You can't help but respond to trolls. Skip them. Well, then you get accused of not, being afraid of them. So you have to give them what chance they can. I mean, obviously, I stopped reading once they hit the Jew button. So I give them their chance, and then they blow it. So I'm sorry. There's no right way to play this stupid cunt thing. Why don't you do a YouTube channel and show me how? Smart ass. Uh, Jeez. Water is a lattice of molecules. Yes, pointed out already. Wish Ken would debate with you, Gary. Yes, Ken should have the balls to put his what he thinks he has a perfect explanation of reality. He should be willing to show people how great it sounds compared to all the rest of the wacky theories. I mean, he should invite the opportunity for him to smite me. Why is he afraid? I mean, he's just such a hypocrite. I mean, he mocked me for having long hair, and and yeah, it's 90 degrees in here. It's actually 90 degrees in my house, and I wasn't wearing a shirt, and he mocked that. This big, giant, fat, tattooed guy mocking somebody else's appearance. I mean, it's just so laughable. That's the best he could do. I can't debate you. You're mockable. You're funny looking. I mean, can you believe that excuse? You're funny looking. Ken Wheeler says, I can't debate you. You're funny looking. Hilarious. Coward. Well, his last couple of videos have left no doubt that he's just a religious kook. Yeah. I mean, the life force takes away the magnetism. The dielectric life force. If current is electron flow, is voltage a pulling force? Oh, please. How many times do I have to go over this? There's no such thing as pulling. Obviously, the voltage is when you're pushing electrons into each other. You're compressing the force between them. So the little ping pong balls between the electrons are getting tighter and tighter. So they're bouncing back and forth faster and faster. And so that's why you end up with X-rays when you you hit electrons or matter with a lot, you pressurize it with a high voltage, you can produce X-rays. Is because of this very reason, because you're pushing the electrons into each other. A little ping pong ball, which is the X-rays, they're bouncing really, really fast. And when they're released, they have a tight frequency, X-ray. So it's all about pressure. So the higher the voltage, the higher the pressure. That's why they keep talking about like the Hadron Collider in terms of electron volts and all that shit. Because they're really talking about pressure. And that's voltage. Pressure is voltage. All right. So the current is we measure it based on how many electrons are pushed from position, moved from a position. But the real thing that's moving the electrons is the pressure being released. So they're expanding their distance from each other. That's what's pushing them. That's what's moving them, is that they're expanding. They were contracted and forced into each other. Now the force is pushing them, which is essentially the electrons being uh, but the point is that force can move from electron to electron, in the sense that the electrons will just balance the force by just moving a little bit towards each other. So the whole electron isn't moving, it's just moving closer to its neighbor. Closer, 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 closer. So the pressure is moving between the electrons. Uh, well, voltage is technically a form of energy. Well, clearly, pressure is energy. That's all there is. Pressure is energy. The Earth, for example, the center of the Earth, huge amount of pressure. That's a bunch of stored gravitational energy. Been stored by everything that's hit the Earth. Everything on the Earth right now is pushing down on it. And it's stored all that energy as pressure. Well, I'm battery. It's pressure. The pressure goes in, the electrons are pushed into each other. Push, push, push. More electrons come in, push all the electrons closer to each other. Pressure. Uh, per unit charge. Yes, well, the charge is the electron, so I don't know what else to say about that. Okay, so the voltage is the potential force between the electrons. Yes, yes. Potential is kind of a tricky word. It's trapped energy. It's trapped light. It's trapped X-rays. It's trapped whatever frequency you can make it. So however close you make them, you will create, when you release it, you release that force, you'll create either X-rays or red light or radio waves or whatever form of energy you wish, based on the pressure of the electrons. The more you pressurize them, the higher the frequency you can produce. All right, off topic, but what do you think of AI? Well, I like the movie. It's very depressing, though. Yeah. It could have been a really great movie. The ending was a little bit but yeah, but it was really getting to something about how life is just stupid programming, you know, and so that part of it was really good. Great time to be alive. No, I don't know. You think there's such a thing as an artificial intelligence that will have some other questions that talk about than these questions, and that somehow the artificial intelligence will automatically have, I'm Mr. Spock and I have all the right answers. Well, Vulcan got blown up like every other bullshit planet, so Vulcans weren't too smart. Just saying, AI is a pipe dream. We're really fucking intelligent already, and all we need is more knowledge and better. We need better scruples about collecting evidence before we draw conclusions. We haven't even proved life is worth living. People haven't even proven that one yet. They just assume it. All right. Anyway, no offense, but don't you think you should get glasses to help you read? No, it's better to force your eyes to play the game. So yeah, I'm 58 and I've never worn glasses. Now, okay, I don't read too well, but I didn't read too well when I could see. I mean, I was dyslexic as a kid, and I was never very good with the. Uh, I was good at reader, but I was a shitty speller, and words in written form I never liked too much, frankly. But I think I can read well enough to get it done. Okay, so generally speaking, so who cares? Fuck you. There. Lattice physics, a regular repeated three-dimensional arrangement of atoms. Well, that's pretty much what I said, right? Ions and molecules in metal or other crystalline solid. Yes, that's what I said pretty much. And obviously, plasma is not very solid. I'm just saying I don't care. I don't really. I don't have some need to tell you that plasmas can't produce consistent bending of light. Maybe they can. I'm just saying we haven't any evidence of that. That's all. And I made the argument, I can only make the argument I can make is that I think the constituents of the plasma are vibrating way too much to create consistent lens like bending. They'll produce scatter. And scatter is not insignificant. That's what they've already, some of their experiments, they do this with radio waves and they've said, oh, this proves Einstein's lensing. And all they've done is prove that they send out radio waves and they get back one millionth of the signal back. And that would be perfectly consistent with scatter because scatter will scatter it in all directions. So clearly the shortest path would look like it got lensed. But no, it's just scattered. There'll be paths that'll look like a lens, but then there'll be all the other paths that are all messed up. So yes, if you're only looking for one path, you can find it, and it'll look like it was Hey, look, it's bent 6 degrees, perfect amount, blah blah blah. Well, of course, because the scatter is going to produce 6, 8, 7, 10, 12. It's going to produce all degrees. It's just going to produce a tiny bit of your signal gets back. So clearly, it's not evidence of gravity bending the light. It's just evidence of scatter, and that's why you get so little back. What about an electron microscope? I don't know what that has to do with anything. I'm sorry, I don't know what subject that is. What about an electron microscope? What about it? It's a really complicated, actually. I don't know how they even figured it out. I mean, it's just so strange. You coat the object with metal, and then you shoot electrons and bounce them off the metal surface. And depending on how they spin, not spin like rotate, but how they bounce off the metal, like what direction they go in, then they read the bending of the electron as an orientation or of the surface, which is really incredible that they figured that out. I mean, you look at a diagram for an electron microscope and you say, who the fuck figured this out? It's so fucking weird. Oh, this arrow of time thing, you already posted that in the comments section. If you're confused about how time works, time is a function. You can't undo a function. Okay, it only has one direction. It only has one. Once you mix the ingredients are mixed. You're done. Okay, they don't unmix by some magic. There's only one direction in terms of time, because time is because photons don't move instantaneously. So we have a non-instantaneous universe. That's why there's time. But there's no reason to think there's any way you can run it backwards or run it forward or change its speed or do any of that shit. No reason to believe that at all. So there's no even reason to consider time as being a thing, distance as an arrow of time. You can't travel it without consuming time, and you can't unconsume it. So there's nothing to it. I am persuaded that the heat may fuzz the light rather than bend, okay, especially when the corona is no a nice sphere, but a whatever straggly looking mess. I just don't think water is a lattice. Well, obviously, water, when it's agitated, like it has thermal energy in it or it's doing a lot of movement, if you look through it, then you'll see it, distort an image. So clearly, calm water, the molecules of water convey the image rather reliably. But if the water has too much agitation in it, it stops being a good image. But let's understand, light's moving really fast. So the water molecules have to move really fast for the light to get distorted. So it just has to do with the heat of the water, the amount of movement. But at calm water, that is water to normal temperature, the light has plenty of time to get from molecule to molecule and to be accurately represented in those transitions. All right. Do it use Tons plasma? See, this isn't my fault. My eyes are fine. Okay, I mean, I didn't write these bad sentences. Do it use Tons plasma to view a high amplitude than optical? What the fuck? Does it use Tons plasma to view a high amplitudes than optical? To view at high amplitudes. I don't know what a high amplitude is. There's no amplitude. There's frequency. So if you want to say, uh, could you view? Obviously, the higher the frequency you use X-rays, you can get more resolution. The finer the frequency, the better resolution you can get. But again, I'm just going to keep arguing. If the pieces that are lensing the light, I mean, that is absorbing it and readmitting it, are the electrons. If they're moving too much, you can't possibly get a good image of anything. All right. Do you use, okay, no, I already did that. Could the lensing be caused by unknown electron storms in space? No. Electron storms. So you got to really understand, electrons will always move um, in the direction of a charge imbalance. And there's no place in the universe, that's full of stuff here, that there isn't a charge imbalance. So they'll always start drifting in the direction of the charge imbalance. So if your spaceship is 10 feet away from an electron you let go, it's likely the electron's just going to run back to the spaceship, because it's going to have more protons than anything else in the available space, and the electron's just going to want to get to those protons. The protons are always leaking more force than the electrons. That's not the right way to say it. Because obviously, you can have charged plates, positively charged and negatively charged. And a negatively charged ship is going to oppose the electron. So, but I'm just saying there'll always be charge differentials. So it really has to do with the distance between the electrons and the protons. And then you can, the closer the electrons are to the protons, the more the proton wins in terms of the charge field. But the further away the electrons are from the protons, then the negative charge wins and the electron will run away. But there can't be a storm of electrons unless there's a storm of protons. So there has to be, you only move electrons with charge. That's it. And gravity, but gravity can only accelerate an electron. It has to keep pushing it. Electrons can't gain velocity. So if you let an electron go at the outside of the Earth, and we assume there's no charge to get in the way, the electron would just go 10 meters per second per second. It would never gain higher velocity. It would just go 10 meters per second until it hit the Earth. They can't hold the velocity. They can only be accelerated. Mendham's always on a period because real intellectuals like Ken Wheeler. That's hilarious. Oh, it's Nicole. It's Tesla. Oh, it's just hilarious. Real intellectuals like Ken Wheeler or Piro. Oh, that's so funny. Makes his nuts fold on sight. Well, my nuts are, available for viewing, and they're clearly not bothered by either Ken or Piro. So Tesla was always a bit of an idiot. He still is, apparently. Just a nutter. No, we don't need these wasted time, people. Fuck you. Fake Tesla. Just the idea of people stealing other people's names. I don't know why that doesn't. That would bother me. To steal a dead man's name. Just to play around, even. It seems really rude that I would assume I can walk around saying, I'm going to pretend to be Abraham Lincoln, or I'm going to pretend to be, it's just really rude. So the question video, playlist questions, the three questions, nobody, not one single response addressing any of those three questions yet. Not one. And I did do a new overview video, the last video I did, which was pretty simple. Any idiot could get it. Let's see. Oh, it's the OG man guy. Let's see. Hope you're doing okay. Haven't looked at much of your physics stuff, so got no questions yet, but just curious why the name Draft Science. I'm sorry. I mean, that should be pretty explanatory, right? I mean, I'm not a professional scientist, so I'm kind of doing the draft version. And what I'm drafting is a new physics. I'm starting over. So if you go to physics, I mean, draftphysics.com, not draft science, draftphysics.com. The website's there and it basically says do over and why I'm doing this. So that's why it's called draft, is because it's basically start over science. Most of science is bullshit. I mean, I already did, I've done this with evolutionary theories, all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of crap where they made these assumptions about reality. It's like the humans and the size of our brain is the deal. And it's not the size of our brain that makes midgets, okay, little midget people, perfectly fine intelligence. It's not the size of our brain. All right, it's the configuration of our brain that made the stuff like that. I'm just saying, there's lots of stuff to explain. Hey Gary, how can you prove that the force bits exist? Well, I can do it. Oh, that looks like a proof. Look what they did. That's the only way you can prove it is by proving it, indirectly. That's the only way we prove light is because we indirectly, right? The light hits electrons inside of our freaking eyes, and the electrons create an electrical signal, a voltage that goes right through our brain, and that's how we know a photon happened. You can only do it through those indirect ways. You can't see a photon. You can't bounce photons off of photons. You can't bounce energy off of energy to see it. So the only way you can see it is by consuming it and then say, what did I just consume? All right. But I mean, I don't have to prove that the cosmic background radiation exists. They've already conceded it exists. I'm just arguing there's more radiation that isn't at a frequency. No frequency, so you can't see it with electrons. You can't move electrons with it and say, ah, there, I see it. You have to watch things move. You have to watch matter move. It won't create a voltage. So you can't measure it by creating a voltage. Can what they think they see just be miscalculation? Well, what they see is crap. They don't. It's misinterpretation. It's not miscalculation. They don't see any of this. They never saw a Higgs boson. They never saw a quark, for fuck's sake. They see indirect happenings and they assume the existence of some thing they've decided is the leprechaun that caused it. The sun does not produce a thing called the solar wind. I don't know about that. And at some point, it comes to a head with interstellar solar winds. Look, they're not really winds, they're blobs of energy, but whatever. The movement of these particles is similar to that of nebulas. Well, the movement of nebulas is insane to even have a conversation about when you can't really watch a nebula move. I mean, it moves so slowly, we can't watch one move. Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, so indirectly. So if we see a blotch wall on the magnetic film, it is a proof that there is such a thing. Well, yeah, magnetic film, but obviously it doesn't have to be magnetic. Um, you can just have anything that causes a chemical reaction when photons hit electrons, but you have to detect it through an indirect means of having the photon hit an electron. If the photon doesn't hit an electron, you're never going to see it. You're never going to know it existed. Hey Gary, do you have any idea what emits those radiations causing gravity? Okay, so I don't even know what to say to you. Hey Gary, do you have any idea what emits those radiations causing gravity? I've already explained you know, the electromagnetic spectrum is stuff at frequency. Now, if you take away the frequency and you still have the stuff, that is, it's at random distances from each other, all that kind of stuff, that's gravity. I don't know what to say. Gravity is made out of both polarizations, by the way, too, which light is always the black, the electron polarization. The electromagnetic spectrum is just one form of the energy. It's just the black energy, the electron sensitive energy. The proton sensitive energy, we don't have any instrument to measure because the protons are too hard to move. So you can't jiggle protons out of their position with proton energy. Even though about providing mathematical proof about any of your theories. Ever thought? Oh, okay. Again, this argument about math, why should I redo math? I'm not saying math is wrong. I mean, I'm pointing out how Maxwell basically proves my theory, okay? So I'm just saying most of the math is completely consistent with what I'm arguing. Most of the math is actually illustrating how it's induction, how it's a straight line force. That's why they call them virtual photons, is because the math says so. The math forces it to be a ray of force. So the math already agrees with me. Even Einstein's math agrees with me, the speed of light. Okay. The part where he goes wacky is his theory about how a photon thinks it's in the gravity twice as long, therefore it's affected by gravity twice as long because it thinks it's so. Just because it thinks so, that means the gravity hit it twice as much. I mean, that's kind of bogus. So I'm just saying most of the math is fine. I don't have to redo math. Oh, fuck. Well, I mean, again, most of the math agrees with corpuscle of light. Feynman said it over and over. Well, not over and over, but he said it overtly. He wishes he could tell people it's not a wave. It's a corpuscle of light. And it's perfectly consistent with the math. A corpuscle of light is perfectly consistent with the math. All right. While electrons are easy to move. I don't know what that means. While electrons are easy to move. Causing, let's see, Gary, do you have any idea what emits those radiations causing gravity while the electrons are easy to move? You're going to have to write better shit sentences than this. I mean, I don't know what the fuck that is. So gravity is just less force bits between two objects, more force bits on matter pushing them together. More force bits on matter pushing them together. No, the matter bits get closer, the force gets more energetic, obviously. And its hitting is the definition of energy. So if I have a ping pong ball bouncing between two surfaces, I move the surfaces closer, there's more impacts, which means more energy. Energy is when force hits matter. So I've increased the energy by just moving the two things closer together. I didn't need to put more ping pong balls in. But putting more in also increases the energy, obviously. All right, so gravity is just force bits between two objects. No, there's just no hope for you people. So gravity is just less force bits between two objects, more force bits on matter pushing them together. No, there's more pressure on the outside than there is the inside because it's shadowed essentially. And when something moves, that means it absorbed the force. I mean, I did this in the overview video, the last video I made called Overview Gravity. Watch it. Shit. The speed of gravity being the same as the speed of light is good evidence for your theory. Yes, that's true. So you got a sentence that I could actually read. Thank you. Yes, the math says that they say, yet the math says what they say is wrong. I don't know what that means. So the charge math are give special cases. So that I don't know what you're saying. Sorry, point out the math, okay? Where I'm saying when they call it the wave equation, it's just the pattern equation. There's nothing in the equation that has a wave in it. The only thing they have is a sine theta. The sine theta is an angle. It's not a wave. I'm just saying they're calling something something doesn't mean it is something. So I'm saying their wave equation doesn't have any waves in it. It has an angle in it. Damn. Let's see. He didn't say it was matter pushing matter. Well, the only way matter pushes matter is the force between the matter gets compressed and the force pushes on the matter. So yes, if matter pushes on force, then the force will push on another piece of matter. But yes, the interaction always has to be force in between. So matter technically never hits matter because there's always force between it. So matter pushes into another matter bit and creates a compression, and then it bounces off of the force. That's why electrons don't hit electrons. They bounce off the force. Matter is being pushed, the force pushes. Yes. well, the force doesn't, yes. I mean, the only way to say it is the force pushes, but obviously the force gets compressed, which means more pressure. More pressure means, usually means more likelihood of it pushing back. If you compress a spring, there's a likelihood it will expand. Okay. Yes, that is what I said. More pressure from outside, more force bits pushing them together. Yes, but you still have to understand there's a subtle difference in the sense it's not just pushing them. The thing that's moving only moves because it actually captured force. So it's capturing force, which means the force doesn't get where it was going, which means there's less pressure on the thing it's heading for, which means the thing it's heading for heads for it. But absorption is a fundamental part of this idea of the force imbalance. The imbalance is created by the absorption of the force, the temporary suspending of the force's trajectory, the trapping of the force, as I've said so many times, the trapping, trapped, 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 trapped. Okay, how can you prove this to be true? You can only prove it by demonstrating how it's more consistent with the evidence. I'm saying all the evidence does point to this. All the experiments are consistent with this. And the fact that it unifies physics is one of the strongest proofs for it. It explains the connection between gravity, magnetism, and the nuclear forces. They're all tied together really neat. So that's a hell of a good reason to believe. All right. Gary proceeds to drop a pen to demonstrate it. Yeah, well, I can't do anything. It's like I said, I'm trying to come up with experiments that will in some other way illustrate this force not at a frequency. But again, if it doesn't move electrons and it doesn't move protons enough, then how can, you know what I'm saying? Anything that doesn't move protons or electrons enough is going to be invisible. If it is consistent with the hypothesis, it constitutes evidence. It's consistent with the evidence, which is the point. The hypothesis is consistent with the existing evidence, and it points to a bunch of wrong conclusions in the part of the evidence that is suspect, like lensing, for example, like interferometers, for example. All of their crap that's weak, it points to as being flawed. So it's not consistent with the weak evidence, and it's consistent with the hard evidence. That's a very good thing. Okay, having a theory that's consistent with the hard evidence and inconsistent with the mushy evidence, I consider that a pretty big positive. Let's see. Hey Gary, do you think it is possible to have? Oh, okay, one before that. So if the force bits pushing two objects together from the outside, pretty much, yes. That's where the force starts, is on the outside. That's the first pressure. But if the force gets pressed between and gets more energetic, isn't it pushing the matter away from each other? Exactly. That's why things explode. That's why there's a nuclear bomb. That's why, like, again, if you took away the gravity, the Earth would expand quickly and dramatically because it's under extreme pressure. All right. Hey, Gary, do you think it's possible to have a clump of matter so dense it would absorb all the velocity coming from a direction to cast a 100% dark shadow onto another object? Again, the shadow is always going to be made of an absorption of force, that is a velocity. So you have to move it, okay, to create a perfectly dark shadow. And yeah, I find it um, unrealistic that you can create enough pressure. So I'd say that the external pressure is always going to be more than any internal pressure, but I don't know. Surely the more matter, the more absorption, the darker the shadow. The point is when the pressure gets too great, the atoms themselves degrade and they end up falling apart and going ballistic, nuclear. So I don't think you can't force electrons too close to each other. There's a point where it's just too much pressure. So I'm just saying I don't, and then the atom doesn't have any stability. So I'm just not sure that you can do this thing where you can condense matter into the super condensed form. I don't think there's any mathematics that says that can happen except for gravitational bent space mathematics. I don't think you can do it with atomic mathematics. I don't think charge would allow it. Surely the more matter, the more absorption, the darker the shadow. Well, again, you have to understand the shadow is really being created by the protons and the electrons absorbing the force. So they're absorbing energy in terms of movement in a direction, acceleration. So when they accelerate, they move much slower than the speed of light. And they're stopping a force from getting where it was going by using it to move. All right, according to observations, the universe is expanding. Well, it's not observations, it's just one piece of data, redshift, in an accelerated rate. Again, bullshit. I was wondering if your theory offers better explanation for this than mainstream science and their elusive dark energy. Well, I think, yes, dark energy is horseshit. Whether or not the universe is expanding at a faster rate or slower rate gets into just, again, uh, way out on a limb conclusions. So, and I'm arguing that redshift, I think, is complicated in the sense that I think objects moving perpendicular to us at very high speeds can create redshift, but I don't know for sure. But it's not my expertise. It's not a subject I'm terribly interested in. But if I have to become it someday, I will. But I'm just saying it's not a priority. Hey Gary, when do you think the main physics model was still okay? Hey, hi Gary, when do you think? I don't know what that means. The main physics model was still okay. Well, I said right in my website that we need to start over post Newton, pre Einstein. So somewhere after Newton and somewhere before Einstein, things were still okay. And then they went retarded. Is radiation the electron being pushed out? Radiation isn't in the form of electrons. Radiation is in the form of photons, gamma, or atomic nuclei, beta, right? Beta. Um, so there isn't any radiation in the form of electrons. If gravity equals force bits pushing matter bits together from outside and there is more energetic force bits between two objects, shouldn't the more energetic force win? If force bits pushing matter together from the outside, how many times have I to say it? It's absorbing the energy. I've said it 4 times now. And there is more energetic force bits between two objects, shouldn't the more energetic force win? Yes. And so where's the argument that the external force is overcome by the Earth's internal pressure? You're just not getting it. There's layers of pressure. You have to add up all those layers. So the Earth, the center of the Earth has a pressure of whatever, a zillion pounds per square inch. And it has to go through all the layers of the Earth before it gets to the field pressure again of 10 meters per second, let's say, the surface pressure. So it has all of that. You have to add all of that pressure up. There's not just like it's just one piece of pressure molecule. It's the density of all that mass, okay? All of that pushing force, all of those force bits pushing in a direction. Yes, they're collimative. They add up. There's a bunch of force pointing towards the center of the Earth. Results that there is no gravity at all. Yeah, whatever, fuck you. What is antimatter in your... There's no antimatter. It's just a complete made-up pile of shit. Backward configurations of normal tons. No, there's just no antimatter. There's no antiparticles. The whole thing is crap. Even Susskind admits there's no antiparticles. There's just vacuations, okay? So when a proton, say, gets ejected from an atom or something, the spot where the proton was is called an antiproton because there's an imbalance inside the nucleus now. There's no antiparticles. Just, it's a silly metaphor they used, and it's crap. I understand the matter absorbs the velocity and the matter cannot be compressed without a limit, but you can add up layers of particles that don't have to be very compressed, but simply aligned. I don't know what that means, but regardless, there has to be, if they're all, if all the forces bits are pointing in the one direction, then they're obviously going to add up to a pressure. So if there's 10 people pushing a boulder, the boulder's more likely to roll than if there's one person pushing it. The force between objects is less than the external pressure. Um, no, I can't say that. I'm just saying that obviously the center of the Earth is a long way from free space. There's a whole bunch of force between it and free space, force trapped between matter, and all of that force is pointing it towards the center. So I'm just saying clearly the pressure in the center of the Earth could be much greater than on the surface of the Earth. But I just don't know why you want me to tell you one way or another whether you can create a force interior that's greater than the force exterior. And, I'd say, yeah, you probably can create more force pushing out than pushing in, but you have to understand it in the context that you can only do that inside a shell, inside a material thing. It can only be deep inside the Earth. It can't be on the surface of the Earth. Beta emissions are electrons. Right, and beta emissions only go a few inches. They don't travel anywhere. So, it's not like what we call regular radiation, right? The important radiation stuff is the stuff screaming out of the damn shit that's going to give you cancer. Well, that beta crap isn't going to do anything to you. Oh, I don't know why you people worry about such bullshit. The light is just a little physics experiment. It's just LED lights moving in a spiral. Yeah. Stuff you people worry about. All right, let's see. Um, I think the real scientists didn't see it because their imagination isn't as good as Gary's. I don't know what the reason is, frankly, thinking about it, because they all had the same opportunity to say, yeah, this story sounds way too wacky. I mean, photon splitting in two. Come on, no, it sounds really an infinite number of wavelets being created. I mean, their theories were just so bad that nobody, none of them could say, that can't be right, and look for the right answer. Shit. It's about an imbalance, and the air can be absorbed from everywhere equally equals no movement. Well, obviously there's movement. I don't need to your statement that there's no movement. Whatever. But if some object absorbs some of the velocity, yes, from a side, you get imbalance. Imbalance equals movement. Yes, imbalance equals movement. Exactly. Balance, no movement. Imbalance, movement. The matter just obeys the force. The matter just obeys the force. The matter bits themselves don't hold a velocity. They can't do anything. The only time you can move something permanently is when you get like a helium nuclei. Then you have a structure, and that can move with velocity, permanent movement. Sorry, all this time I was thinking they had actually isolated actual particles. They haven't isolated. They like I said, they're doing detective work, so they have like a half of a footprint. They just don't have enough evidence. I never knew it was sort of proclaimed trace evidence sort of thing. Yeah, it's really tracy. Well, some of the stuff there's no evidence. The dark matter thing was completely just made up to fix the math. I mean, their math didn't look like it was working right, and they said, "Well, we don't have enough gravity," and they said, "Well, why don't we just make it up?" Yeah, we'll have like a special gravity making thing, and it doesn't do anything else though. It only makes gravity, and otherwise it's completely invisible. Oh, okay. Visible man to the rescue. It was that bad. I mean, there's just nothing to it at all. They just needed an answer and they just made up an answer. Just made up a special, super kind of new matter that doesn't have any material things in it at all except it makes gravity. So it's nothing like matter except it makes gravity. I mean, I mean, it just, I mean, desperately God of the gaps bullshit. You don't have any more evidence than Ken Wheeler has. Well, fuck you. I have plenty of evidence. Again, my theory unifies. Ken Wheeler doesn't even have a freaking coherent theory. There's nothing you can visualize. Magic magnets making magic swirly dirlies out of the special spiritual energy of the universe. We have all this special motiony dotiony movement all over the place. And yet he doesn't even explain how the two magnets move into each other. Not one fucking explanation of how one magnet moves into the other magnet. Nothing. Absolutely no explanation. It hyperboloids. How is that an explanation, you fucking cunt? All right, anyway. And you think your theory is better. Yes. So fuck you. Just fuck off. You're not making an argument. So fuck you. All right. Let's see. Gary, don't you think good evidence for the Big Bang is that it predicted? Shut up. You crazy? Didn't predict anything. The quantities of the elements in the universe? They made that up. What do you mean it didn't predict anything? That's just silly. They keep making up new ways. Look, the last time they did the stupid LIGO thing, they said, look, we created a new whatever they call it, a quasar, whatever they made out of the two black holes, and then they say that made a gold planet and an iron planet, and we made 10,000 million tons of gold or something. They just made this shit up. Fuck. Antimatter would actually be believable if they were able to show an actual viable clump of antimatter. Well, like I said, there's no anti. All the anti shit is anti. Okay, it's anti. I'm anti because there's anti-evidence for antiism. Okay, there's anti-evidence. No real evidence, just anti-evidence of anti. All right. Since they say it behaves the same way with photons, yes, the anti-photon, the anti-everyton. It's just made up shit. I know dark matter theory, but I didn't make antimatter in the lab, or is that a photon-free atom, proton-free atom? I don't know, but whatever. There's no anti. I'm just saying it's clear bullshit. Uh, let's see. Wait, stars making nuclear fission is according to you. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, stars are big, giant hunks of matter, and there's probably a huge amount of pressure on the inside. And the fact that the helium and hydrogen start doing some blending and separating seems perfectly reasonable to me. So anyway, a proton-free atom. I just don't think you can do that. Neutron is a proton and electron, right? I mean, they sort of figured it out, right? A neutron decays into a proton and an electron. So let's just assume that there are a proton and electron that have gotten very close to each other, and that's a neutron. All right. So obviously, a neutron is still a nucleus kind of object. So you could have a neutron and just an extra electron. So, they call that like a whatever, a plastron or something, don't they? I mean, there's a name for that. So, but I mean, I don't think they have the expertise to do the fine cutting of these sandwiches. I don't think they know that they've made an atom without a proton in it. I just don't think they can do it. Dissecting protons out of atoms is really difficult. So I'm not confident at all they can do that. But according to you, can stars make heavier new atoms with lighter atoms? Well, obviously they do that by smashing them together. So, I mean, what's so complicated? You smash two hydrogens, you get a helium atom and a bunch of leftover energy. that the leftover is the radiation coming off the sun. You get it? So you take 2 and you make 1 and you have some left over. If you say post Newton before Einstein, so why are you keeping the speed of light as a constant in your model? Because it is. Because there's no evidence that it ever goes any other speed. I mean, this is so fucking stupid. Oh. No, there's absolutely no reason. Every bit of the electromagnetic spectrum moves at the speed of force. Every bit of magnetism moves at the speed of force. Gravity moves at the speed of force. C. That's what C is. C is the speed of force known in the universe. There's no evidence of a force ever moving any faster or slower. I mean, it's just so stupid. Why do you need to break the speed of light? Why do you need light to go some other speed? Because you have some wish or hope that you're going to be able to what? Send a message to Alpha Centauri? Is that it? You want to have a live video, you want to do a live Google room and send it to Alpha Centauri and let an Alpha Centaurian in the room so you can do your faster than light communication thing or something. What the fuck do you need to break the constant for when every single piece of experimental data demonstrates it's a reliable constant? Okay, so why would it be absurd to very heavy stars take tons of gold? Okay, so why would it be absurd to say that very heavy stars can make tons of gold? I never said they couldn't. I said they are making it up. They have no evidence except their theory. Okay, I'm just saying they don't know what really happens. They don't know how this actually happens. It's a theory. You don't understand? They don't really have any evidence. They just kind of make it up. Oh, when it's this temperature, it can make a gold. And when it's this temperature, it can make platinum. And when it's this temperature, it can. They're just making it up, fuckhead. They haven't done it in a laboratory, have they? Have they made any gold? Oh, anyway, till next time and such. I think we're about done. I have to go finish my gardening before dark and such. Do my watering, blah, blah, blah. It's still 90 fucking degrees in here. God damn it. All right. So anyway, so thank you, participants, and till the next frustrating time and such, so forth and whatnot.